Hi, everybody. Jeff Gayduk here from Leisure Group Travel, and I'm happy to be with Steve Lima from G Adventures. Steve, how are you doing today?
Yeah, nice to see you, Jeff. Doing great, doing wonderful.
Yeah, quite a departure from the last time that we were together in Black Hills, South Dakota. A lot has changed in the world, and I'm glad that we could take a few minutes here today and talk about what's going on at G Adventures. I guess first and foremost, talk about your plan to reintroduce tours into the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot has changed. The industry has been hit tremendously. But as you know, G is a very resilient company, privately owned by an amazing visionary, and he's always kind of kept us innovating. We've tried our best to keep our passengers safe, but now we're taking extra precautions. So we've launched a few new lines of trips that we think are going to be more successful in being, higher, going that extra mile for physically distancing the people, face masks, such as that, private transportation. So I can go into details on that later, but that's probably the first thing that I think people will look to is that safety that's going to be held on these tours and knowing who the
Absolutely.
travelers are going to be.
So, first and foremost, when do you think you're going to have travelers back on the road?
It's a good question. We've suspended trips now until the end of August. So we released that a little while ago. We've been doing our best to do it every 6 or so weeks at a glance because we're trying to keep a real pulse on the market. Some trips are already departing in early September in the UK because they're starting to have a bit of a bounce back. So some of those trips are still departing. But I would say, for the US in the situation that we're in still with the COVID cases being on the rise in certain areas, I suspect fall. We'll see how August looks. If this thing starts to pan out, I think we could potentially be back in the States in the early fall as well. So.
Nice. Yeah, everybody would certainly welcome that. So let's talk a bit about this reimagined tour experience that you alluded to. What sort of things are you putting in place now that will make people feel a little more secure when they're traveling?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, the line is called Travel with Confidence Plus Collection. It's a series of 37 tours, and different destinations. Costa Rica's in there, Morocco, Jordan. Some of these regions have had really, really low reported cases. I think
Sure.
last count, Jordan was 703 cases and 9 deaths. So when you look at those numbers, you start to think, well, that's a bit safer than some other areas. So we really went through and looked at these destinations. Um, some other ones like even Iceland as well, being a great
Mm,
destination. They've done a lot for COVID in testing. But things are going to be around 4 areas really. So smaller groups, typically our group size is 16. These will be reduced to 12.
nice.
They're very, very small, very manageable. All private transportation. So as you're getting, obviously outside of the flights, once you're arriving, you're being picked up in private transportation, and no public transportation will be leveraged. Sometimes on our trips, you might be on a train or you might be on, a local transit, a bus or something. That's all been updated. And so for these 37 trips, it's all private. My own room is an option that we give our passengers. And right now we're giving that at 50% off. So you can get your own room as well for 50% off, giving you that hotel room the entire time by yourself.
Mm.
Um, and every single hotel, we're ensuring that things are cleaned, hygiened. People will not empty a room once they clean that space, which is great. So yeah, there's a
Very,
lot more to it. Obviously on the ground, there's a lot of things that they're doing. But those are kind of the 4 pillars.
sure, very, very well thought out. So, I guess one of the benefits of being a global company is that you have different source markets. We here in the US are dealing with a surge, and I think there's some hesitancy to travel right now. But some of your other source markets, so the UK, we felt that things were moving along well. What other areas in the world, source market wise, where you're seeing some activity and it looks a little more promising?
Yeah, it is promising. We've got 5 key markets that we do sales and marketing out of, including Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, and the US. And we've got 28 offices around the world for operations. And those 5 offices, I'd say, Canada's actually been doing a great job in terms of COVID cases. Feel that that market will rebound quite quickly. We're starting to see some good interest. And how we're monitoring that interest is we're issuing travel credits at 110%. So if you had a trip and you were affected by COVID, and we had to suspend or you wanted to cancel, there's 110% travel credit that was given. We're monitoring those folks that are actually now using those for future trips.
Hmm.
And what's great is you can combine that with a discount. So you're actually seeing a discount rate on the market for about 15%. And you add that to the 110% that you got, you're actually getting about a 25% discount on that future trip. So people are using that towards excursions or hotel transport or that mile in room. And we're seeing some good pickup. We've seen great pickup for areas like the Galapagos, the Expedition, our ship in the polar regions. And a lot of those travelers are coming out of Melbourne in those areas. And obviously Melbourne had a spike, but the offices in Melbourne, we've seen a good pickup from Australia, and Canada's been doing great as well.
Nice. Okay. So really well thought out process there. I love the travel credits, and maybe you're even getting people to use that credit on a future trip after the first one they book. So endearing yourselves for lifelong customers, just really smart business tactic. So centering back on the US, I've seen some operators who have come out with a product lineup for US-based operations where, we know that overseas travel will be perceived as a little more dangerous. And I think the other thing that's going to hurt is it's going to take a while to get the airlift back to where we want it. Has G thought of or developed any US-based product that will appeal to people starting this fall if they don't want to hop on an airplane to go overseas?
Yeah, it's a good point. We, at this moment, have not created a new product. There are some, our product managers are looking at brand new tours to launch starting next year. Destinations that have been discussed are Hawaii, and having some great options for Hawaii. Flights have been obviously, very cheap right now for Hawaii, which is great. Always a typically very expensive place to fly. And then we're also thinking of other options around the national parks. We have an amazing partnership with National Geographic. And these national parks have always been in our backyard, but they attract those German markets, those Australian markets who want to come to the States and do that traditional road trip. We're looking to potentially transform those options with Americans and making that more affordable. Other options as well as Puerto Rico, a destination that we've not been to, but accessible for Americans, basically without a passport, which is great. So those are just a couple of things we're looking at. Yeah, we're excited about the national parks. Hopefully you can team up with Nat Geo and see if you can get some stuff going for the US, but nothing in the fall, potentially early January, February.
Early 2021, great. So one of the things I've always admired about G is you have a very strong focus on the environment, on sustainability, and on helping the local people where you're traveling to. And that's been a commitment from the early days. Unfortunately, when things like this happen, and we saw this through the previous 2 recessions, is companies are quick to abandon their environmental focus because they're so focused on just trying to stay in business. How do you really integrate the 2 together where you're sustaining operations and also trying to sustain the environment?
Yeah, it's super important to us. I think, anybody who knows G probably looks at us as a travel company. And I know, Jeff, you've always been a big fan of us. We're really a company that believes in changing people's lives through travel. And that's the people who travel with us, so they have an amazing time. But it's also the communities that we travel to. We try to say we want our passengers to have the time of their life, but in the background, kind of just below that layer, you might not realize, but our supply chain, who we work with, is impactful. And we grade ourselves on that. We actually gave ourselves this Ripple score We went out to third party, surveyed every single one of our suppliers, and asked them what they do in the community and where they're hiring and what they're doing with those funds and who owns their company. And we were able to come back with a score. So at any time, you can look at our brochure or our website and see this Ripple score and understand how much of your travel dollars staying in the destination. So think about, whether you stay at a hotel that's owned by a U.S. Firm, or someone that's owned in a small family in Miraflores. And so we tend to stay here. We don't say we're not going to stay here, but we try to focus on staying local. And we have done our best to keep those Planet Terra projects, the project that we visit, supported with a couple of things. One, we've got a couple of impact funds that we've gone out to any of our fans. People have traveled to Planet Terra projects before to see if they want to help donate. Tremendous outreach from across the world to really help support us. Bruce, our owners, actually went to match it. I think it was up to 50,000. And the other great thing is travelers, with your LTD, if you have a travel lifetime deposit on file with us, you can convert that to a donation and we'll match it. And we've gotten a tremendous amount of people who have had a deposit on file for 5-6 years and have just said, what, I'm not going to travel at this point. Let me just make a good situation with this. So that's how we're trying to support them. And the last thing is we have the CEO Wellbeing Fund. So if all of our guides are called Chief Experience Officers. And they're all out of work right now, right? So we're trying to support them as much as we can with the Wellbeing Fund that's been supported by Planet Terra, and our passengers. So we're doing our best to keep that local community intact because it's extremely important to us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what this really shows is how important small business and entrepreneurs are. And when the travel industry stops flowing, those guys dry up very quickly. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing to help them through the process. And as we get back to traveling again, full employment for everybody. So last question, Steve, on a little bit lighter note, those of us that travel for a living haven't been out very much lately. Any place you're itching to go when this is all over, or something that you want to do again?
It's so funny, and it's going to be opposite of maybe what you're thinking, but my wife and I have never really done an RV road trip. We've got a 4-year-old now, and so kind of just want to pack it up into an RV, take the dog, take my son, and just go for a ride. Maybe it's the Smoky Mountains, maybe it's the Adirondacks, but finding an RV though is not the easiest right now. It's pretty expensive and pretty hard to
check out rvshare.com. You can rent them for the week, and that's not a commercial.
That's a good one. Those are more like the Airbnb style of it.
It is.
Outside of the domestic background, in our own backyard, I would love to get to Spain. Southern Spain, I think, would be great. And funny enough, my wife and I do have a trip booked for Greece next May with my mom on one of our sailboats. So we're looking forward to that. Hopefully that stays intact, which is great because we know there's only 6 cabins on the boat, so we'll know everybody on there pretty quickly.
That sounds perfect. So people that are interested in more information about your recovery plans and resumption of operations, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, check us out at gadventures.com and check out the tab on the top around private travel. We launched this thing called Book Your Bubble. And essentially, that's the best place for our groups to go and find out. If you want to travel on a typical trip, you can be joined with a group of 12. But if you want to book your bubble, you can actually contact us. We can either tailor-made services and create a trip, or you can pull one of our trips off the rack, if you will, and just tell us who the passengers are going to be. And you've got your own date and everybody who's going to be on that tour. And essentially, you're protected with a peace of mind knowing that everyone's safe and healthy on that trip because you know them personally. So, yeah, it's a really cool service. So check us out, gadventures.com, and then check us out for private travel.
Yeah, book your bubble. I love it. That's a great term. So congratulations on your ingenuity through this. Obviously, a very hard time. Looking for better days ahead and seeing things get back to some degree of normalcy. But appreciate the update today, and best of luck to you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And best of luck to all the group leaders out there. There'll be a forceful amount of people getting us back out there traveling. They're going to be at the front lines of that. So thank you.